Hello everyone, this is Cesar. I'm enjoying a lot the coil splitting in my Pulse guitar. And this is the second part of why my guitar sometimes sounds out of tune. The same warning applies for this second part and for the first one. If you think you know everything about tuning, this is not your video, don't watch it, right? This is a video for beginners because you want to admit it or not, we all have been suffering that disease, mainly when we were starting to play. So let's get started. Well, I will work under the assumption that you have watched my first video on the subject. If you have not done it, I will put a link in the description section. Click it and then go and watch that video because it's important that you get the context, okay? In that first video we discussed many things, among them your technique. Your technique when you play your guitar, that is a key component of staying in tune, right? In this one we are going to focus on the nut, tuners just for a while, and the different type of bridges that you may have in your guitars, because depending on the bridge that you have in your guitar, there are several rules, right, for staying in tune. So let's get started with the nut. We discussed in the first video how important it is to have a very well cut nut because of the first fret action, right? Let's assume that your nut is well cut. Now, there are many people that do recommend to put lubrication in the nut with several products that are sold in the market for that. I never use any of those products. When I use a lubrication on my nut, I use this type of pencils, right? The lead of a, let's say, thick graphite pencil, and I simply, scratch there the pencil in order for the string not to get caught in the nut. I only do that in 3 or 4 of my guitars. I have several guitars, as you know, right? And it is important for you to know that, at least in my experience, when you put a nut, a tusk nut, the XL ones, the ones that are self-lubricated, you never need that, right? So my first message here is, if your nut is well cut, you won't need necessarily the lubrication. And if you use lubrication, you don't need to buy those expensive products that you will see on the market. The lead of a pencil, graphite pencil, really works. This is the reason why in some of my videos, if you watch them carefully, you will see that my nut is a little bit black here, right? It's kind of dirty, and it's dirty because of the graphite dust that I use in order to keep it lubricated, for the string not to get caught in any of the spacers, right? This happens more often with the bone nuts, in my experience too, right? As I said, when you put a Tusk XL nut, you won't need the lubrication, right? Now, the tuners, the tuning machines. And I know that what I'm gonna say is going to sound controversial, right? But I have observed a passion for the guys in YouTube of changing immediately, buying a guitar and then changing the tuners, right? Listen, unless they have a lot of play, meaning that when you are tightening the string or loosening the string, they don't respond immediately, and they are wiggling, they have some play, right? And most of the times, even that, you can solve it with the different screws that the tuners have. Here, look, for example, this is my Pulse guitar, right? Now, let me zoom it for you. You see that the tuning machines, the tuning pegs, have a screw here, right, on top of the knob, and if it is too loose, you simply tighten it, and that's it, right? And in the back, they also have the screw, right, that if it is too loose, you simply tighten it, right? Then, unless, again, the tuning machine has a lot of play, right, and doesn't respond immediately to your action there when you are tightening or loosening the string, you don't need to spend money in changing your tuning pegs. Sometimes the problem is gonna come, most of the times, from your technique playing the guitar and for how well set up the guitar is. We will talk later about that. So my second message, sorry, would be check before changing your tuners, because maybe they are not guilty of you going out of tune. Now let's talk a little bit about bridges, right? So I have taken 4 of my guitars out so you can see different type of bridges, right? The one on the left is my Pulse guitar, my PRS Pulse guitar. That is a hardtail. The hardtail means that the bridge is fixed, it won't move, right? The one immediately on her right is my Yamaha, is my favorite guitar ever, right? And that one is another hardtail too, but it has a difference, right? Let me zoom it for you. So there you go. On the left hand side you have my Pulse guitar, the PRS, and on the right you have the Yamaha. And if you look at the bridges, both of them are hardtails, so the bridge won't move, right? But the difference is that in the PRS you only have, let's say, one bridge, the stop tail, right? And the strings are top wrapped around it. It is how it is designed. But in the Yamaha, on the right side, you have the stop tail on the bottom, and between the pickup and the stop tail there is another metallic thing that is the tune-o-matic. So those are two different hardtail bridges, right? But the characteristic of these ones is that they don't move. They are fixed. So they are not going to have moving pieces, right? And it is going to be easier for you to manage. If you are starting guitars that are hardtails, you're going to be easier in tune than if you're playing guitars that have floating bridges, like the two ones that you are going to see now. And there you go. So you have on the left hand side the PRS, and on the right hand side you have the Stratocaster, my American standard Stratocaster. Both of them have floating bridges. You see they have a bar. It's called the whammy bar, right? And it's important that we all use the right terminology, right? This floating bridge, many people call the floating bridge a tremolo or a tremolo, and it's not a tremolo. It's a vibrato, actually, right? Vibrato is the difference in pitch, right? Which is what you get when you use one of those. And tremolo is the difference in volume, the tremolo effect of an amp or a pedal. Basically what happens is it has very fast variations in volume, and that's the tremolo, right? So the whammy bar, the floating bridge, is a vibrato unit, it's not a tremolo unit. But anyway, having said that, the two are floating bridges, they work differently, right? The mechanism is the same, but the concept is a little bit different. There is a urban legend about the Stratocaster not staying in tune because of the vibrato unit. I have a video on my channel, I will put a link in the comment section, debunking totally that, brutalizing that whammy bar, and my guitar always stays in tune, and it does not have locking tuners. We will upload another video talking about the differences among floating bridges, because there's also the Floyd Rose style that is not here, right? But I will show you. Anyway, the message is the next one. If the guitar is properly set up, it won't go out of tune even if you use massively the whammy bar. Again, I have a video on my channel where you can see what I do with the whammy bar and my Stratocaster, and it doesn't get out of tune. Now let's focus on one of those floating bridges. Well, when playing in a guitar with a floating bridge, there are a couple of considerations in order to stay in tune that are really very important. First one is how well the guitar is set up. I have several videos on my channel setting up guitars with floating bridges. It is very important that the guitar is properly set up, right? Second, really here, cheap guitars and let's say high-end guitars really make a difference, right? In floating bridges, usually very cheap guitars don't have good materials in the floating bridges, and they are not gonna help you to stay in tune, right? Third one, the locking tuners. they are a bonus. They are not a must. Again, I have a video on my channel brutalizing totally the whammy bar of my American Standard Stratocaster that does not have locking tuners, and it stays perfectly in tune, right? It's a very good guitar. It is very well built and the materials are really very good. But locking tuners are gonna help you to stay in tune in a guitar with a floating bridge. Another one is your technique. You need to be very careful if you like to rest your palm in the bridge, right? If you're used to that, be careful, because in a guitar with floating bridge, what is going to happen is that if you put pressure, you see, the pitch is going to change because the tension on the strings is going to change. It is a system that is in equilibrium. For example, if you break a string, it's going to get out of tune because the tension on the strings is going to be different. So if you like to do drop tuning also with floating bridges, it's a little bit of a headache. So there are things that you need to take in consideration when you are going to play a guitar with a floating bridge. Again, the setup, for me, how good is the setup is absolutely key in order to stay in tune in a guitar with a floating bridge. As I said before, we will upload a different video with the different type of floating bridges. I will tell you what are my preferences, what my preferences are, and maybe that would help you to take decisions. Well, and this has been the video. There are a couple of considerations that I want to make. The first one is your technique again, right? If you don't have a good technique, you can play the most expensive guitar in the world, but if your fretting hand applies a lot of pressure to your strings, you're gonna sound out of tune. If you are not able to lighten that touch and to help that amount of energy being used, for example, in building speed and accuracy, you probably are gonna sound out of tune. If you play in a floating bridge guitar and when you do palm muting, you put a lot of pressure in the bridge, you are gonna get out of tune. Technique is very important. Practicing and feeling comfortable with the guitar that you have is gonna help you, of course, to play better, right? See you very soon in my next video, and up to that moment, as always, play your guitars, have fun, and be good. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because you can win a fantastic guitar. I will put a link in the description section so you can enter the contest until we reach 20,000 subscribers. Bye!